Buenas noches. I'm Marta Moreno Vega, President of Creative Justice Initiative, and welcome to Men of Spirit. Today's conversation to me is one of the most exciting ones we've had. I've been planning this session for more than a year, and it finally is happening. So I'm going to introduce you to the moderator of the evening, the Bumba Bendele, and he will continue with the introductions of our panel. So please enjoy. And your comments you can put in the chat, and we will refer to them at the end of the program. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good evening. Depending on where you are in this world, greetings. It is an honor to be a part of this conversation, to help facilitate this conversation this evening. Men of Spirit, we are gathered here with a very esteemed group of men representing a broad range of African-based spiritual traditions and religions to talk about our identities as men, as spiritual leaders, practitioners, and the intersection of those identities, and grounded, of course, in the purpose of why we are where we are, what our charge is, not only to the communities that we belong to in terms of our spiritual religious communities, but our larger community, our diaspora community as well. Much of what we practice today, many of us were not supposed to have. I was not supposed to have Ocha. I was not supposed to be crowned the priest of Obatala because that was illegal. That was something that my people were not supposed to gain. But we have it. The question that we will ponder, we will discuss, is what do we do with it? Why do we have it? How does it guide what we see as our purpose and function? And how our identities as men actually relate and speak to that purpose. So let me go back and introduce myself again. My name is Lumumba Bandele. I'm an organizer, educator, based in the People's Republic of Brooklyn. I am a priest of Obatala for about 18 years now. I am a proud member of Ile Aché, godson of Orisaye and Oyaniyi, and other son of Babafunke, Marta Vega. And so I am honored to be able to share this discussion and facilitate this discussion with you. So what I want to do is go through our panelists and have them do two things to get us started. If you can just identify yourself, your name, your particular role, if you have one that you choose to identify, and the spiritual tradition or religion that you are a part of and where you're based. And we're going to start, and then we'll get into some significant conversations. So if we can start with my good brother, Alex, that would be great.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, my friend.
First of all, thank you guys. Thank you. I'm super honored to be part of this. Marta, I've known many, many years, as well as Lumumba and many folks in here. Paolo, Diogenes saw me tocando bomba, so like, Jose, un hermano mío de muchos años. So I'm Alex Lasalle. I am from Moca, Puerto Rico, but born and raised in New York City. I was initiated into the Mayombe traditions of Cuba at a very young age, and so I've been part of that. I've been part of our spiritual house going on 30 years now, 32 years. But I've been initiated for 28 years in the Mayombe lineage of Palo. What you call a Tatankisi Malongwa Tatandi, a Butako, an elder within the tradition. And I've had Osha crowned now going on 8 years. I'm crowned Oshun with Obatala, thanks to my madrina Umilana and my padrino Eshubaleyo. And recently I had the honor and the blessing of being initiated into the mysteries of Ifa by Chief Popola and Agbola, my brother Jose as well. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey so far, as well as the fact that I'm a practitioner of the traditional music of Puerto Rico, la bomba, as well as la plena, but focusing always my life's energy into la bomba de Puerto Rico.
Hmm. Thank you, Brother Alex. Appreciate it. And Senator, Brother Kevin Parker.
Alafia, how you doing, Lumumba?
I'm doing
And
well.
let me just say, good evening, as it is in Brooklyn, New York, to everyone on this call. Really honored to have an opportunity to be with you all today. Um, I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, the People's Republic of Brooklyn,
That's
as
right.
so aptly identified by our moderator. Um, and I am the majority whip in the New York State Senate, as well as the chairman of the Energy and Telecommunications Committee. I practice Isheshe, initiate to Ogun, initiate to Obatala, initiate to Egungun, and I also have Ifa. And so happy to be part of this conversation and to, really just learn as much as I can from the brothers in the circle. Thanks for including me.
Thank you very much. Glad you're here with us. Brother Dejones.
Um, I'm very happy to be here with all you here, to be part of this panel. As you know, my name is Dionis Ballester, and I'm happy to see Alex here and everyone. I consider myself an archaeologist, which in Spanish is archaeologist, but in English is almost like a Anglicism. It's arte, in Spanish, arte, and then ology in English. So archaeology, which is a term that I developed as a philosophical term to follow my own spiritual uh, journey as a griot, as an egregor. And I feel like now for the third decade, in the third decade of the 21st century, we need to revise many spiritual beliefs, especially in the times of uncertainty. It's time of change. It's time of looking at what really means energy and how we can use energy for the positive uh, endeavor.
Thank you. Welcome and glad you're with us. Can we hear from Brother Jose? We have two Jose's. Arturo, I believe this. Yes.
I cannot hear. Cannot hear.
I think you're on mute.
Let me,
Hmm.
Now, can you hear me?
Now we can. Yes, sir. Here
Okay,
we go.
Jose Arturo, I just stayed here. Uh, I'm a visual artist from Adjuntas, Puerto Rico, living in San Juan now for over 30 years, and I've been practicing exploring uh, Afro-Caribbean aesthetics and in that way exploring everything related to that African heritage here in Puerto Rico, and coming from that area of the island, it's sort of a contrast because I grew up running in the mountains and surrounded by nature. So once I moved to San Juan, that contrast is starts showing in my work. So I'm very honored to be part of this panel, and thank you
Okay.
for inviting me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And Jose Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Rodriguez, born and raised in San Diego, California, one of the rare West Coast Ricans. um, Actually, I'm living now in Rio Grande, Puerto Rico. Been here for about a year, maybe in a month or so. Uh, Come from Ecuadorian and Puerto Rican parents. My dad's from the island here. My mom's from Guayaquil, Ecuador. Been initiated into IFA 16 years now, from 2005 with Fashina Falade from LA, California, was my Oluo. And then been studying with Chief Sherlock Bode Popola, which is next to me here, since I would say formally since 2008, 2008. And yeah, I'm living here now on the island. So
Wonderful.
full-time Babalao is my profession. Used to be a school psychologist.
Abrobo,
All
yeah.
right.
Boa
Wonderful.
boy. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shola Bade Popola. I am the president of the International Council for Ifa Religion. I was initiated into Ifa 46 years ago, and I was also initiated into 9 different Orisha and Oro as the 10th one.
Mm.
So what we try to do is to show the world how to build a community
Mm-hmm.
with Ifa as the background. And that's what we have been doing, and we have been able to do it in such a way that we have Ifa and Orisha communities in 54 countries of the world now that we have been able to do. And also we have been able to expand Ifa to the extent that Ifa has become the number 6 religion in the world now. We have about 350 million people practicing Ifa and Orisha in the world now, which is a great achievement. And all these achievements come from mostly the Cubans and the Brazilians, not necessarily the Yoruba people. But now we are trying to add to the knowledge base. And that's why the Yoruba people of West Africa, we are now trying our best to make sure that we add to the body of knowledge and then we showcase the world what Ifa and Orisha are all about. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. And do we have Paulo? Is Paulo Bispo able to join again? Okay. When he does, we will have him reintroduce himself. Let's get started. But before we do that, I'm going to ask our viewers to prepare questions. If you, as you have them, we're going to ask you to put them in the chat. We will not open the floor for questions because we know with this particular group, we will end up having 38 panelists. So what we want to be able to do is make sure we actually have questions that we can engage the panelists with, and we can have some very productive dialogue. Let's start off. One of the reasons this particular gathering was convened was for us to really talk about the intersection of gender, particularly as men of African ancestry, in these particular belief systems, right? We know that it has evolved over the years. We know that this is something many of us come from these traditions that only a few decades ago was something that we didn't publicly identify as, something that many of us did in the backgrounds, and something that was primarily led on the face by a woman, right? And we recognize that the gender identity speaks volumes in terms of how we come to the work, how we come to the space, rather, how we function in it, and what we do with it. I want to ask you all, if you can, to talk about your identity as, and I don't want to assume anything, that you all identify as men specifically, to talk about how your identity in this particular body that you are currently occupying has informed not only how you engage with the work of the traditions, but also your relationships with community. One of the things we are going to ground this conversation in is community. We know that our purpose and function is to make sure that we have healthy, holistically healthy, functioning communities, and that none of what we do is able to be done in isolation. Like everything from ritual to ceremony has to involve full community. So I want us to ground this conversation in community. But let's start first by talking about how you came to this particular tradition that you are currently a part of, and how your identity as a man has informed how you see yourself and how you plan to utilize and what your vision of this work is. And we can start from the opposite of where we went in. So Jose Rodriguez, if you and your godfather would like to start off, and then we can go back.
Okay. Um, so see how my identity as a man influences my practice. Uh, the only thing I can say is that I definitely know that being a man has allowed me to have certain privileges to information, knowledge, certain maybe being in certain spaces in different branches of the tradition, whether it be Afro-Cuban or even like the more Isheshe. So it's definitely allowed me to get into more spaces, and I've definitely picked up a lot of information and knowledge from that. Uh, but one of the things that I hope to do, and I'm still doing now, is to make sure that as a man, one of the things that I see is ensuring that, at least starting with myself, that I represent fatherhood in the best possible way. Because as far as Isheshe, and I'm sure all the other traditions, like being a very responsible husband, a responsible father to your own children, to your wife, and then having that kind of spill over into those that are in your temple or your ile, and people seeing how you interact with your spouse and your children, and being that responsible father figure, the responsible husband, that hopefully that kind of overflows into the people that you're around, and that they see, hopefully they see me as a good example, and applying the teachings of what Ifa tells us that a father should be doing, that a husband should be doing, and our responsibilities and duties, and hopefully that trickles down, and through teaching and through readings and other ways of transferring Ifa philosophy around being a man in general too. How can I be that role model and help other male figures, especially younger men that maybe don't have spouses yet, or children, or families, or just them being males in general, how they should be contributing to help society, to better society, in keeping families together, taking responsibility for your children, and things like that. Um, I've kind of always had that in me, which is why I got into the school system in the first place. I started as a teacher's aide, then I went into substitute teaching, and then eventually I went into school psychology. And so I definitely saw that in that role in the school system, being a male figure was very, very important. Not just for other young men and boys, but especially for girls to see me in those positions, and to see a male figure who, hopefully I did a good job, that he got his life together. He's not doing anything crazy. He seems pretty mature. He seems like he's getting along really well with his spouse and things like that. And so that the women can see that that's something that they should be looking for when they're looking for partners in life, eventually when they get to that age. Um, and then unfortunately, a lot of little girls may not have that father figure in their life for whatever reason it may be. So those are some of the things that I try to do as a man, in this tradition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I entered into this tradition, even if I were to be a woman, it would have still been the same way. Because I started with curiosity. No member of my family is into Ifa. No member. I was a Muslim, and I started when I was in Ife. When I went to the university in 1975, I just wanted to go and interview all those idol worshippers. That was my intention, and I went to the highest of them all, which was the then Arab of Ife, Arab Awoshope. That was how I went there, and then I started interviewing him. It was curiosity. It had nothing to do with whether I'm a man or a woman. But it is very difficult to differentiate, or to yes, to differentiate between culture and religion. Because in Yoruba culture, of course, we all know that it is a patriarchal society where the man decides everything in a dictatorial way. There is no such thing as democracy.
That's right.
This is what this family wants to do, and that is what the family will do. So I encountered a lot of opposition from every member of the society, every member of my family. But at the end of the day, they started seeing sense in what I was doing. Because by then I never knew that I was going to become an Ifa priest. I did not dream it. But I was curious, I wanted to know more. And the more I know, the more I am eager to know. So at the end of the day, I realized that everything was working in the opposite direction of my intention. Because my intention was to know about Ifa and end it there. But every time that I cast Ifa will tell me that even the job that I was doing, I needed to drop the job and concentrate on Ifa. And I was saying, no, with all this education, I cannot. And that's how we were doing until it got to a stage that I realized that I had no other option but to follow what Ifa had said. But instead of becoming a practicing Ifa priest, I decided to be writing books. That I'll write books and I'll send the books out there for people to read and people can make up their minds on what they wanted. Then I realized that it was not enough. I needed to do more than that. Then I started teaching people until in the end I was drafted into this Ifa practice 100%. And since that time that I had been doing it, I never regretted. Why I also said that even if I were to be a woman, I would do the same thing is all my female children are in this practice. All of them are studying Ifa, and all of them are initiated into Orisha one way or the other, and different types of Orisha. So that would have happened to me too, because that would have been what I would have done. But definitely the issue of male dominance also assisted me because when I insisted that that was what I wanted, nobody could say no to me. If not, getting married would have been difficult because of, no, no, no. If this is the religion that you are bringing, it's not going to happen. But for me, I am a complete package. If you want me, you have to want all other things that surrounds me. It's not only whether I look like somebody who is husband material. You have to know that I'm an IFA practitioner and you must support what I am doing. I do not believe that because I'm an IFA practitioner, my wife must be either a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist. I am not going to accept it because I want a holistic family where all of us are facing the same Olodumare. All of us have our aspirations, our goals, and our demands from the same Olodumare. And I always tell people, if I am to come back into this world, I will not, and I will not come into the Ifa family or Ifa tradition. It is better for God not to create me at all. And if there is anything that the Lord Mary wants to give me that will not come through Ifa, it is better for Lord Mary to hold on to everything that I want is in Ifa. That is the kind of conviction I have today after I had gone through so many other things in life. Thank you very much.
Well, you introduced some concepts that I want us to come back to. We cannot have this conversation and not talk about this idea of patriarchy and how it shows up, how it informs, what its relationship is, not only to our practice, but also our relationship and how we engage women in the practice as well. So thank you for sharing that, and we will return to that. Brother Jose Arturo.
Thank you. Uh, my identity it's tied, very tied to nature, I was thinking by listening to you guys, thinking here how I came to the practice of Ifa, and I must say that I'm a baby here. I've been practicing over maybe 3 years, so I'm baby stepping here and learning. And the way I came to it, it was after the Hurricane Maria. I went to I was working in as a graphic designer in advertising, and my clients went with the wind, and I ended up working in construction and demolition in the islands in St. Thomas and St. John. And for some reason, somehow, I living there for over a year, I realized that I'm not only a Puerto Rican male, Jíbaro from Manhood, I'm also a Caribbean, and I realized that concept, that the Caribbean, that area, that sensation of being part of something bigger. Uh, I grew up Catholic, as most of us in Puerto Rico, and that's how I learned the importance of taking care of my spirit and that and having a spiritual practice. And what I say now is, there have since some events in my life, including that hurricane and on others, I my spiritual life has broadened. It's a broadened path, including IFA practices and other things that I learned and I include in my daily life and my practice as an artist. And of course, it has an influence in my work. I remember one of my first IFA readings. The images that came to my mind, and the beauty of the altars, and it was all images coming to my head, and somehow some of my work it's a representation of that experience, of those ceremonies, and that learning process that I'm going through. Uh, when I came from St. Thomas and St. John, I met my wife, who's my wife now, and she has been practicing IFA for a while now, and she's the one that introduces me to the practice. Even though I was curious long before, and I've been asking questions about my color, and other things, heritage, family heritage, etc. And since that, my practice, my artistic practice is tied to my spiritual practice, and I see that spiritual practice tied to nature and my relationship to nature and to my environment, either the mangroves or the mountains in Adjuntas. And I don't know, I see it as a learning process. And one of the things that I did when I came back was uh, giving photography workshops in Loiza and the area where the hurricane hit the hardest. And it was an amazing experience to see these kids with low self-esteem problems and things like that, broken families due to violence, etc., etc. Uh, Coming to some sort of healing using art and just by expressing and talking feelings and you know being sincere and honest with each other about what's going on inside, and it was an amazing experience. And now that's what I keep doing. I've been working on my projects, and it's a daily thing. Keep practicing and keep learning. And again, it's an honor being with you guys here, and it's a learning experience. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Dejanez. And let me ask panelists if you can just mute yourselves until you're ready to talk. We want to make sure we can hear each other clearly. Thank you.
Yes, right now I'm here on La Playa de Ponce. It's right, I consider this the window of the Caribbean, to the Caribbean. This scenario many years ago, like 60 something years ago, was a very interesting scenario in terms of the spiritual beliefs. I remember as a child, go with my family. Most of my family they are espiritistas, and I go to different centers in which I saw a lot of gathering with a lot of people, and so people feeling energies connected to different spirits. I so many things happen, and how many people were connected to the Catholic Church in the morning, at Sunday morning, and Sunday afternoon they were in the spiritual center, sharing and with all this what they call the white table, and how they use a president on the table, and also those mediums carrying different energies and different things. Uh, that was my first experience with a spiritual life. And then I realized that I have something in my body that was an energy that I don't know exactly what's that. Through the years, I've been traveling different parts of the world, and I've been part of different communities of different spiritual life. And to the point that now I feel like an archaeologist. Like I said before, archaeology, the term that I'm developing, and I'm writing a book about it. And I think it's through all that global syncretism that I've been experiencing all around, I come to the conclusion that the third decade of the 21st century is a very meaningful one because it is a time of uncertainty. It's a time of change. It's a time of looking at back. So what the archaeologists do is basically looking at that past and how it recontextualize the past into something that has become meaningful to us today, and how we can transform this for future generations to come. And that is it's quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge because I've been doing that through my artwork, different installations that I've been doing different parts of the world. But then I decided that I want to write my manifesto around that. And now I'm writing a book about it. And say, well, my spiritual life is just spiritual life. It's like we go into this labyrinth, when to enter this labyrinth. And we go into this labyrinth and get into different spaces, that labyrinth. But once we go out of this labyrinth, we start looking at the gates, and also stand up on the platform to go to another dimension. So what my family were talking about, the spirits, the souls around, it's still more meaningful now when I'm looking at the different dimension of that life. How is we define ourselves today? How is that we feel like we have a spiritual energy going around us? How that energy project to us? How energy project to the community? How that energy in that engagement with community in a synergetical form, it becomes something powerful. That's what I'm trying to do here at the House of Culture. I think it's of La Playa Ponce, because it is a time to really to confront ourselves. Time to confront ourselves what it means spirituality, what it means energy, and how we can use this for today's experiences in this world. It's okay to go to the past. It's okay to look at all this and recontextualize it. But what we do with that? What we do with that? You see, and this is a very important thing. It's very important. We are we're the point that it's strange. I hope no, but it's time it's going to the point of the war, and it's no joke. How are we gonna use the spiritual life in the context of the war? Are we going to the war? We as a people to fight something that we don't believe in? There are people who actually will go. And I don't know, but it's interesting how we're going to confront ourselves today. So here on La Playa de Ponce, looking at the sea, I remember doing an exhibition at the Ponce Museum. I remember asking the director of the museum asked me, what you want to do? So I want to respond to the song of the Caribbean. How are you going to do that? They said, well, we have something very obvious to us, which is the elements. The elements. We have the air, we have the water, we have the earth, we have the fire, and we have something that we don't see, the ether. And that we don't see is what attracts me. That you see, when you turn on the light, you don't know how the light functions, but it's there. So that energy is there. That thing we don't see. It's like love. My wife just recently died, and I call down the ether love, something that you don't see but you feel, and that's the spirits, and that's the dimension of the spirits. It's very powerful. So I'm in these things. I'm not playing a joke with the spirituality. I just want to be real. I wanted something to be real, and I want to connect and cultivate this whatever time I have left.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Senator Parker.
Yes. So this question that you raised actually was like 2 or 3 questions, right? And so I
You
really,
caught that, huh?
yeah, I really like the kind of origin story part of it. So I'm going to try to kind of riff off of that and try to give you a short version of the long story, right? I was born and raised a Christian. My parents, in fact, met at church, right, at Cornerstone Baptist Church in Brooklyn. And so that was always my background and my upbringing. But I always was called to do public service, right? So like even from a very young child, I knew I wanted to be elected, and I knew that leadership in this kind of work was was part of my path and my mission. Not really understanding how I was going to get there, but always knowing that that's what I was supposed to do. Went to Penn State University as an undergrad in the 1980s, and at that time we were, the middle 1980s, we were fighting against apartheid. We were taking over buildings and such, and trying to get our universities and other institutions to divest from South Africa. We were very active in doing that. It happens like 87, 88, and then we transitioned from that moment to now looking at our own conditions at these various white institutions, and so you wind up seeing um, you know, protest movements, not just at Penn State, but University of Penn, at Temple, at Kent State, Dartmouth, but around the country, this is happening. And then I start taking these Africana studies classes, and the more I start learning about my history, the more I start then questioning everything about how I'm behaving, right? As a, in my other life, not only do I work in politics, but I'm an Africana studies professor, and I always talk about it from being, about your worldview, right? And so we all grow up in America with, with these European worldviews, right? If you think about it on a computer, in the old DOS drives, right? When you logged into your computer, you'd be on the C drive, right? Remember that? The Caucasian drive, right? If you wanted to look at a floppy disk or something, you had to tell the computer, look at the B drive or the A drive, right? If you want to be on the black drive or the African drive, you had to consciously tell the computer to do that. And that's the kind of, I think, process I went through early on. And I then, during that same period, befriended Mayo Luo, Baba Sekou Oliyenka, who runs Egbe Sankofa Kingdom of the Gods of Africa out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Baba Popola has done some initiations with him before. Also want to just mention Baba Akawande Ifatopwe in Abeokuta, Nigeria, who initiated me, and somebody else I work closely with is Baba Taiwo Adesola here in Brooklyn, who holds me down with a lot of my Ifa work. And so it was really, he invites me to this African festival called Odunde. His father, who's also, a priest of Ifa, hands me in Coco, and ebows it, right? That makes me hold a bird for the first time while he does ebo. And that was my introduction to Isheshe. And it really was for me a political movement. It wasn't easy. It took me a number of years to get out of the deprogramming. But I just knew that if African people were the first people, that we did not live here on this planet for 10 or 20,000 years before Europeans and did not have a relationship with God. And so for me, the question was, what was that relationship? And Ifa revealed herself to me and has guided me kind of since then. And that's been like since 1988. I received my lekkes in 1995. And as it relates to the question around manhood, one of the first things I received outside of my lekkes are what we refer to as warriors, right? But what I really learned in the Sheshe, really what are really called hunters, right? And there's a difference, right? Because I think that we misuse the term warrior because Oya is a warrior, Oba is a warrior. Shango is a warrior, but they're not hunters. And being initiated to Ogun, I think has become very keen to me the roles that hunters play in society, and that's to me very connected to the idea of manhood. Women can be warriors, but they're not necessarily hunters, and that's not a slight. It's just a different role, right? Just like men are not mothers, right? It's not no slight. It's just a different role, and like with Oshosi, you refer to ala yode, right? Ala lode, um, the the one who provides. And so for me, this notion of manhood has been about providing and leadership, right? And again, it doesn't mean that women can't play those same kind of roles, but there's a particular role around protection, around providing, around providing an outside clarity about the direction of the community that that men play. And you see that with your Orisha, with you have Orisha, female Orisha who are queens, but Shango is the king. He's Kabayesi, right? Um, even in the tradition, even though you have the Gelede society who decides the only Orisha of Ife is always a man, right? And so it is a particular role that men play. Again, there's always a corresponding role for women, but this role of leadership, of strength, um, is important. Oshun is the patron Orisha of cities and communities, particularly ones that are near water, where most of our large cities around the world, European or otherwise, have developed. But the one who opens the way for those cities to be built is Ogun, right? And again, there's this duality there, but there's a particular role that men play, and I think that has been in my studies and my activities have revealed that to me, and so I just try, I think, to manifest that in the work that I do, is to just provide that leadership for my community as an elected official, as someone who provides for the needs of my community, right? The way hunters do, right? And but also to be a paragon of both strength and ethical behavior, as Obatala commands us. And so that's how this has kind of spoken to me.
Thank you. And I want to come back to that. And this again, a lot of this is tied in. We talk about patriarchy as an institution, as a structure. I want us to begin to also pull back the layers of how that informs what you talked about, roles. What are these roles, and how do we disrupt some of the problematic framing that some of that exists, and how do we begin to reshape what we see as some of those challenges? So, Baba Alex.
Hello.
Well,
Well,
and before you do that, I'm sorry, really quick.
Yeah.
I just want to remind the panelists, if you can, just to mute yourselves until you are going to be talking. Thank you, Alex. Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. Well, I was raised by a powerful tribe of Black women. My mother, my aunts,
Talk about it. That's what I want to
my first cousins, my great aunts. There really weren't any men present growing up. In fact, I by choice, I used my mother's last name by choice, and it's because when I turned 18, I said that one of the best ways to honor my mother and the sacrifice of all those women on my mother's side of the family was to carry on the last name that within at least our line of the family was dying out, and pass it down to my children. And so I was raised in a household of mainly espiritistas, right? Puerto Rican espiritistas, but where there were Orisha practitioners as well. It wasn't until a little bit later that I became a gangulero, and started really practicing palo. And it was because of not being the healthiest of kids. And so my family would take me to the doctors. They thought it was tuberculosis. It turned out not to be tuberculosis. Then So they brought me to an espiritista on Manhattan Avenue around 100th Street when I was about 8 years old, who then said, hey, there's really nothing I can do. This guy should see a santero. So my aunt and my mother took me to see a friend of my mother's, a very long friend who has Oshun crowned, an Oriate. His name is Johnny. Oshun crowned many years. He was my mother's beautician, hairdresser. And so he read me, and within the Dilogun, he said, well, eventually this boy will crown Ochun. But right now he needs to focus on his ancestral traditions. He needs to focus on Palo, and so that's how it started. They brought me to see a Palero who then didn't turn out to be my godfather, but my godfather was present at all the ceremonies, and I ended up getting initiated under Florencio Miguel Garzón Ayala, the head of the house of Bejuco and Finda in Sasi Monafilo Batalla Sacarampeño. And that's my first introduction to what manhood was, and having a male figure around. And so my very first introduction to manhood really was the oath that I took as a gangulero, as a practitioner of the Congo tradition, which was to be a good father, to be a good brother, to be a good son, to be a good religious practitioner, to be a good man, period, a good leader, a good provider to my family, to be honest, to be willing to help those in need. And so I really began my search for what it was to be a man within these traditions around that time. And within that, a lot of different things. There was a lot of different factors growing up like that, because I'm learning, I think, more now what it is to be a man than ever as a father. I'm a father of 4 wonderful children, being a husband to an amazing wife who's like light years above me. And that's really, but it really sunk in when my daughter was born. And I remember a friend of mine many years ago says, a man is not a man until he knows what it is to be a father to a daughter. And so it's like, all right, it was a whole new way of thinking, of seeing the world, a whole new way of loving. You understand? Where a lot of my teachings came from the streets and from hanging out and doing things that I wasn't supposed to be doing growing up. But really, it was through these traditions, through all these traditions, through Ifa, through Orisha, through Mayombe, and just being around amazing women my whole life, where I really get the understanding of what it is to be a powerful, good man. And something that needs right now to be reshaped as well. We're coming to a whole new era where I'm seeing my kids have a whole new definition of what it is to be a man in this society. A whole new way that I didn't grow up with. It was a lot more rough. You had to be, the tough guy. You had to be willing to throw down when you had to throw down. It was a whole nother way of being when I was growing up than what my kids are experiencing right now. So I feel like it's something that's evolving and changing and growing. And really, I have to thank all the women in my life for that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And that was the first time I heard that. What was it again? You aren't a real man until you fathered a daughter?
Yes.
So as a father of 2 daughters, I can testify.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
I can absolutely testify, indeed. So what I want to do is, first I want to make this a conversation. I want it to be less me directing questions, but I want us to function as if we're sitting around our living room. Okay, and I want us to really just to talk freely. But the first thing I want us to do is to discuss how we, as male practitioners in these traditions, honor the feminine. Baba Kevin talked about the the duality, excuse me, of some of the roles. And I want to disturb that a little bit and talk about, some of those are assigned. Some of that does not leave room for choice. Some of that does not provide us as a community, the space for folks to really create anew or to have a different interpretation of that. So I want us to just talk a little bit about how we as men in this tradition, in these traditions, honor the feminine energy, what that looks like practically, and how it informs what we see our roles as spiritual leaders. And I'm going to open the floor so we're talking in our living room.
Yeah, look, I think that it always, I think is how do you, I think for many of us, and particularly in the tradition, like how do you even talk about being a man without in relation to women, right? Like I think all of us have been, significantly influenced by the women in our lives, whether it's been mothers or wives, or even the people who help engage us in our various professions, right? And so I know that for me, um, it has been, until she passed, and even after her life, because as we know in this tradition, you get more powerful after death. But my mom has been a really, really powerful influence on me, and I think taught me as much about what it meant to be a man as my father did, and not necessarily in the same kind of pointed way that my father was like, "This is what men do," as much as my observation of how she interacted with my father, right, in good and bad ways, right, but also always, reminding me of how important women were to our family and our lives, and I certainly have seen that in my own office, where for the 19 years I've had the pleasure of representing my community. The vast, vast, vast majority of the people who have supported me and worked for me and voted for me have been women, who have done the things that nobody else would do, have been supporters of me, have been the ones who've checked on me, the ones who've held me up when things were not going great, and I think that has made me not just grateful to them, but understanding their their pivotal and permanent role, not just in my life, but in the operation of the world and the universe.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is again some of what I want us to begin to unpack. Like, what is our relationship? How we honor the feminine, and I want to also just say, how do we do that when it's not in service to us? Sometimes we honor the feminine when it is something that is benefiting us, right? But how do we honor the feminine in practice? Because we understand one of the things this tradition has taught me is that every physical body contains both feminine and masculine energy, right? And so how do we honor that? Jose.
All right. So I can't say too much because my elder's like sitting right next to me. So I just put a little dab in there, and that's part of Yoruba Ifa etiquette. But the information I'm sharing comes from him anyway. But just a very basic thing that Ifa priests do in Yoruba land. When someone gets a consultation, is going to get a consultation from you, we always ask, "What is your mother's name?" Very simple. Every single time. What is your mother's name? What's your biological mother's name? And it's very simple. It's about giving respect, but more than anything, in the Yoruba tradition, the mother, women are considered more spiritual than men in the Yoruba tradition, hands down. Two, because she gave birth to you, she was connected to you for 9-10 months at a time. She is naturally going to have more influence over her children, spiritually, physically, emotionally, than the father is going to. There are circumstances where sometimes that does not happen, but there's things that can be done to bring that back, so that woman has that Aché over her children. But even during the reading, it's almost like We are mentioning the mother's name there to ask for her blessing so that her child, whether it be a boy or girl, has the blessings of the mother and the support of Ifa, and so that things will work out better for her or for him during the reading. Um, I always share this little story, and this is something you'll see in a lot of cultures, even the most patriarchal cultures. I always say, like, the moment my son might come running up the stairs and say, "Hey, Dad, can I go outside and feed the chickens or something?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, go for it, go for it." But he might be running back down the stairs and running to mom, and mom might be like, "Where are you going?" "Oh, Dad said I can go do this." And the moment that mother says, "No, you are not doing that," my word just finished right there, and he has to do what mom said. So that's the type of Aché, of influence, of authority that women have over their children, and it's talked about a lot in the Ifa tradition. Um, and yeah, just the mere fact that we mention our mothers in every single reading is how much that femininity is honored in the tradition. And that's all I'll share for right now.
Thank you very much. I don't know where to start, but there are three ways of looking at it. The first one is yes, we mentioned the name of our mothers, and then if I gave instruction that let us bow down for women because women give birth to us before we become personalities. And if I went further to say that bow for women because they are the ones who gave birth to Oba before the Oba became an Orisha. That is what Ifa says. It may be different from what people do in the culture. And that is the thing that we need to understand. Even when we look at what people do, you realize that from the olden days till today, we have more men who are initiated into Ifa than women. The reason is simple because being a patriarchal society, every division of labor has the man at the center. The man takes decision on financial expenditure more than women. So after making the money, it is easy for the man to initiate. And every financial needs of the woman, she depends on the man. And the issue of, oh, let us save some money for you to initiate may not come. But the reason also is that Yoruba land is an agrarian society where everything depends on the land. Everything you want to become depends on the land. But it got to a stage that some other women are making more money without necessarily referring to land as the primary source of making the money. Like those who sell clothes, those who are weavers, those who are merchants. They now make their own money in their own way, and then they can now go into it. But that does not stop the men from suppressing them. And this is where the issue of witchcraft comes in. When you suppress women for too long, the women now look for alternative ways of having their own power. But when you know that you have two, three things that shows you that your wife is a witch, or your wife has that power and she knows how to manipulate it, you think twice before you stop honoring her. Because whatever you want to do, she can destroy them. And that is where women get more power. It's not as if men just conceded power to women. No, it's not done anywhere. It is because we are bound to give them that honor. If not, things will spoil. Then, before we do anything, they will say, "Oh, I pay my homage to Olodumare, to Aromela, to my Oluwo, to my Ojibbono." And then to Iyamoko, that is women generally. You pay your homage to them, and then you say, "Everything that I want to do today, please let it manifest because we know you are our mothers and blah, blah, blah." It's not because we wanted to pay homage to them. It is if we don't pay homage to them, there are consequences. So when women come out fully to show the world that they have arrived, yes, they have a point because there are so many occasions when they are suppressed. But because they have this additional power now, it is difficult for people to suppress them and it brings societal balance. And that balance is what we are still using up till today. There is no way you will go to anywhere to perform that there won't be any woman there. Even if I initiation, a woman is supposed to be there. If there is no woman in any fire initiation, it is not complete because you need the female energy. In Oshetura, if I give, and also in Oturu Pongbe, Ifa tells us the story of how 400 male Irumole were defeated by one female Irumole, which was Oshun. And that shows us that with all the powers, with all the braggadocio of men, they still need to reconcile with the women if they really want to progress. So those are the three areas that we need to look at it. It is not as if, oh, men are so magnanimous and they are so good, then they conceded power and started to honor women. No, it is because the women fought for it and they got it. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Alex,
Yeah,
is
I
that
was
Arturo? Go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, it's on you. Just go ahead, please.
So yeah, I was gonna add as well as a practitioner of Palo, of the branch of Palo known as Mayombe, right? We are taught very early on that Mayombe is mother. Understand that Mayombe is in itself is it's a feminine energy, um, and that nothing can be done without the blessing of the mother. Um, Even within traditional Congo cosmology, in the creation of the universe, according to the Congo cosmology, it was born from the nothingness that we understand to be Kalunga. The universe is born from this dark matter, from what was before the universe, what was before the any kind of physical or tangible um, anything, right? So this source where everything springs from is called Kalunga, and in this aspect, Kalunga takes on the feminine um, force that gives birth to the universe, gives birth to Ensambi Ampungu, gives birth to God, gives birth to all the different energies that are born after or that are created by the divine. And so, as such, we're first taught that without the mother, um, one, there can be no initiation. You can't get initiated into Malongo, into Palo, um, without the Yaya, without the mother being present. Because her role in the initiation is to bring you back from the dead. Whereas the father's role, the male role, is to kill off the old life, the old you. But without the mother, there is no rebirth. There's no birth period, and so we are taught that Mayombe is mother. That these practices, these old Congo practices, the mother is the very first source of everything. So a special respect, special honors are given, and that has unfortunately changed in many houses of Palo, where they have become beyond patriarchal, where it's like where it's now like a machista, right? And that's something that takes it way past what we understand as being patriarchal. And you still have a few handful of houses of Palo that are trying to continue in the old practices, but it's something that we're facing, that we're coming up against daily.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. And so for Jose Arturo and Dejones as artists, I wanted to just add another layer to the question. How do you honor the feminine, particularly in the expression of your art in this tradition?
Well, and if I can, um, I want to say first that I'm a father, a grandfather, and great grandfather, and also I've been a professor at the university. I have a lot of women, and I have a lot of friends, women friends in my community, many other communities, and I believe in a woman equality, in the whole human race equality. And I think that's very important for me as an archaeologist to say so before I start. But I remember the first scene my childhood. Coming back to the first story that I told, the woman mediums used to say, my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, all them, when they come, they know French, they know French, and when they got the spirit say, bonsoir, and then there was the spirit of the madama coming in. So what I'm trying to tell is that the spiritism here in La Playa took another dimension from the Caribbean because a lot of people from Haiti came here. So when you look at the connection of the Loas and the spiritism, they took another dimension. Um, for example, here behind the house is it was the last spiritual temple that actually was destroyed recently. But it was interesting. There was someone from Haiti throwing shells, and doing all the rituals all around the sea. I mean, we can get into this for a long time. But what I'm trying to say in terms of the women's first confrontation that I have with this whole idea about the machismo and all that, that they're trying to, society trying to input that on all the patriarchal ideas. Actually, was in Wisconsin when I did my first painting, Struggle of Woman. It was a huge mural. And I have this painting, A Woman as a Warrior. Was a warrior that actually was very powerful. Uh, but also the element of the Madama, the African woman, become that the main subject of my work. She tells many stories. I remember the one in China that I did, the Dance of Chango. It was the Madama with a lot with the other little Madamas inside dancing on the Caribbean Sea, on that area of the Caribbean Sea, the globe, the planet globe, but in the area of the Caribbean zone or area. It was interesting. Then later on, I worked in another piece, the point of origin. Point of origin was an installation that didn't respond to the African sculptures at the Museo de Ponce. And it was interesting because when I saw this figure in that, I mean, I'm supposed to go over there to respond to a painting, and I have the painting in my head. But when I look at that, the mask with this all the madamas that always have the clothes, this suddenly I saw them naked around that figure coming out from there like the beauty. So that was a mask from the Igbo culture, and I associated with actually with Ogun. It's interesting because when I work on that piece, I felt that was really the honoring. I was honoring the woman's beauty, the woman's powerful experience of procreation, and also what someone was saying over there: without woman, nothing happened. And it's true. We have a balance in our life. Chinese call it yin and yang. So this fire and water can connect together and become something, you know, and powerful energy. If we know how to, if we know how to use it. So that's the thing. It's not just a symbol. It's something there more deeper than. So, as an archaeologist, I try to look at all these issues. But the first one is woman equality, working all together, and the human race equality. So I'm looking not just as a patriarchal idea or matriarchal idea, I'm looking at go beyond that. Go beyond that. We have to overcome the situation, and we want to live together, and share together and grow together in our life. And of course, the spiritual life is a very powerful thing that connects all of us. How is that some people can connect together for procreation and have a wonderful family? But how is that people can use the idea of procreation to grow to a spiritual level? It's another thing to do. You see, you can see. I remember someone was a woman told me once, look at the light and listen to the light. It's very important to look at the light and listen to it. You're looking at your own spirit, but how are you going to share your own spirit with someone else? It's very important that other person look at the spirit and listen to the spirit too. So we are connected. But what it is, if we are in the community, we are looking at each other eyes. I mean, looking at each other light and listen to each other light and connect all of them and become a powerful energy. And so we can move and we can do things. And that's what we're trying to do here in the holistic part, in our meditations and qigong and all these things that we practice, trying to overcome who we are, not just as individuals, but also as a society, as a community here. So what I'm trying to say is that looking at the female and the male as equal energy, it can really create a powerful energy. And that is something that I want to work with it. So the art have been a wonderful vehicle. And this idea about being archaeologist have been even better because I don't have to be attached to anything. I become a free spirit. I can use anything that I want by my installations. I just received, and when I tell the story, this is, I connect with male and female. In the barrio of New York, a person called Pepper, 60 years ago, commissioned a sculpture, San Martin de Porres. You know that saint, San Martin de Porres? He used to levitate. He used to transport his body to other places. And he born in Panama, and he become fraile in Peru, and he lived a lot of racism from the Catholic Church. But this person Pepe from he lived in 108th Street. He had the business there. He was a bodeguero. But he was a 100th Street between Lexington and Third. He commissioned that sculpture, and the Merchant Marine actually bought the sculpture for Barrio. He transported it over there. So 50 years later, San Martin, I mean, the person Pepe, who was Afro-Boricua person, he died, and the daughter decided to sell that store and take his mother to Yonkers. So in Yonkers, a mother after that died, and recently, November 2020, the daughter died, and she left a will, and it will say that this image, that sculpture, is a huge sculpture. It has to be donated to an institution of someone who is becoming spiritual or is spiritual. So I'm here in La Playa de Ponce, I'm not in New York, and they called me. They asked me if I want the sculpture. I said, yes, I want the sculpture because my first escapulario was San Martin de Porres. And I was actually, when I was in Assisi, Italy, and I was there, I asked some of the Chinese seminarists, say, why they're doing there. They say, oh, we are here because we consider San Francisco de Assis, the other Buddha. And I told them, but the other Buddha in the Americas is San Martin de Porres. So it's interesting that in 2005, I say so over there in Assisi. Suddenly I'm here with the sculpture that I'm going to put in one of my installations of the found object. So it's interesting how the story comes together. So what is spirituality? What it means? Where we go with this? You know, so it's interesting to see how art connected to many things and how you can use the energy, you can extrapolate the energy, you can extend the energy and do something beyond that. And you don't have to be a slave on anything. You don't have to follow any dogma or anything. You project your energy with the positive energy, and you actually become something, and you do something, and you create something with other people. And I still studying that part because I think it's my mission in life.
Mm-hmm. And you said it allowed you to become a free spirit. Is that it?
Yes, I'm a free spirit.
Okay. Thank you. Jose Arturo.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm a father of a beautiful 18-year daughter just starting college, studying art, and I come from powerful women. My mother, my aunts, my two sisters, and so on. And I grew up, respecting and learning and acknowledging that power and that all that knowledge, that ancient knowledge from my grandmothers. And I remember my grandmothers were weavers and teachers, and the house was always full of people learning things. And my granddad was one of from my parents' side. My dad's side was a barber, and from mother's side he had a hardware store. And it was normal for me to. Those roles were very established, but there wasn't a difference or a machista situation going on. It was very equal and very everybody helping everybody, and a very big united family, and still it is. And my daughter for me was a catalyst of many changes in my life, including my artistic life. How do I honor women in my work? Well, just by the way I approach nature, and the way I see light. And for me, that's creation is it's an mother nature in a basic way. And I remember growing up in Adjuntas, and going out early in the morning to the countryside and coming very late during the day, and just spending the day contemplating and watching birds and watching plants, and listening to the noises, and that had a very important impact in my work. And the way I see the practice of Ifa is that it's like a contact with these forces of nature, and in a conscious way, and it's been very helpful in my case, and it's now one of the things that I learned from my padrino is to, when I do an installation, I try to do it sort of with the steps, or the you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an ending, and in that process you have this. Hopefully, you have a spiritual experience, and I try to have a. I would like to show you something that I did in an installation that I did in a school called Agoico here, close to where I live. And what I tried to recreate was a space called Montu, a sacred space in the mountains. And let me see if I can share it with you guys.
Well, you need to share your screen. You're able to do
I
that?
think. Can you see? Oh. I think I froze. Oh shit.
No, you're not frozen. We just aren't able to see.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
No.
No. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm froze here, so I'm gonna wait.
Okay. We can hear and see you fine, so you're not frozen our end.
I cannot see you guys.
You can't see us.
So my screen is frozen. Just give me a second. You can continue without me for a second.
Okay. All right, because we do want to see your work. No worries. We do want to see your work. Thank you. All right. So we want to ask the viewers to please again put your questions in the chat. We're going to get to them in about 10 minutes. But I want to circle back to two particular concepts that have been raised already. Baba Populo, you talked about the idea that we live in a patriarchal society. Our traditions are grounded in a patriarchal society. Baba Kevin talked about the duality of roles based on gender. How do we disrupt the things that have that require disruption? When we have prescribed roles that we know limit the ability for folks to do certain things, what is our role now to be able to adjust where things need to be adjusted? Because we're talking about the idea of patriarchy being established. That means as men, we have a responsibility to address that, right? That means that we have a responsibility as men to not only be about women's equality, but women's liberation, if we are really, really honoring the feminine. The question is, how do we do that in our practice? What are the ways that we begin to disrupt some of the traditions that are inherently problematic that need to be disrupted?
Yeah, like I said, we need to understand what Ifa had said and what the culture had said. They are not the same. Because what Ifa says is that everything we do must be complementary. The function of the woman will complement the function of the man. And when you look at this Odu, Oguda Ika, Oguda Omabiaka, everything that a man is supposed to do and the woman is supposed to do is clearly stated. But that is what Ifa had said. But what did the people do? Those are the differences that we need to understand. If we can follow what Ifa had said, there won't be any problem. It is not as if everybody wants to, or all the women want to become Ifa practitioners, or that they want to become Yanifas. No, it is just that those who want to become Yanifa, let them be given a plain ground to operate. And those who want to be Olorisha, let them be given opportunity to operate. Then we talk of the limits. I do not see it as limit. For example, the limit of a woman is she cannot see Odu. Yes, she cannot see Odu because she is Odu herself. So how do you now go and be looking for what you already have? So that is the way I look at it. And then the limit of a man is no matter how powerful a man is, a man will never become a witch. No matter what people say, it is not true. A man can never be a witch. And if a man is interested in becoming a witch, the man will become the slave, the servant of the women who are there. So I do not see all those ones as problem. But when we now put deliberate barrier to the progress, the development of women, that is where I feel that we need to concentrate upon. And that one will not happen if we follow the dictates of FIFA. What FIFA had said, the laid down rules and regulations of FIFA. If we follow it, there's not going to be such barrier. It is clear. But we need to now look at most of us who are FIFA practitioners, especially these big parts of Babalawo. It is not only women that they suppress, they also suppress the younger ones too. How we'll be able to do it, because it's not only we are talking of only gender, even uh, uh, parents and children, they suppress them. They don't want them to have certain informations, and what they say is that, oh, we cannot give them those information because if we give them, they will misuse it. That is what people say. But still, they need to have an idea. If not, some of the information will disappear completely. We won't be able to have it. Let us follow what Ifa had said. Let us follow what Orisha had said, and there's not going to be any problem. Everything will go on fine. But to bring our people to that level of consciousness where they will accept that allowing other people to play their role does not rub off your own authority. That is where I feel that the problem is. I have seen this one playing itself over and over and over and over again, but we just need to do it in such a way that everything will be fine. That is all that I am going to say.
I was wondering if I could add something. I know Lumumba's in
Go,
backstage.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Something that also I learned from Chief also that was very interesting, that just two things. So one, that when you go and travel to Yoruba land and you see the children doing the chores in the house when they're young, you see them doing the chores of both men and women, cleaning, washing. You see everything happening while they're young. And what eventually happens is as they get older, especially going into puberty, then you start seeing that division of labor where they start, then they do divide, okay, these are the male jobs, these are the male positions. But because that's done at such a young age, when the division does happen when they're older, they respect each other's positions. It comes a lot of respect instead of competition, or my job's better than yours, or it's I got more prestige than yours. It helps to create respect for those positions. It's something that I've noticed. There's also a lot of spiritual teachings too, where it is said in various in Odu, where basically men are considered the initiators of things. which doesn't mean that women cannot initiate things. It's just men are considered the initiators, and women the ones that manifest what the men start. And one of the examples I usually give always when teaching things about this is even just the process of procreation, as an example. When the male and female are together and they're having the act of sex, there's something that is initiated from the man that gets then passed on to the woman, which is basically the semen, and the woman takes that and turns it into the baby that it's supposed to become. So there's that duality that's always happening between male and female, the initiating part and then the manifestation part. And then you see that same initiator manifestation aspect in ceremonies, in rituals, like Chief mentioned, in even Ifa initiation. The men initiate the ceremonies, but there's aspects where the women need to put their Aché for that manifestation to happen. So you see it in a lot of different ritually, philosophically, when it comes to roles, division, and roles of responsibilities and duties. You see that present. In saying that, though, and this is also something that happened with Chief too, there are specific Odu in Ifa that, for example, in Aché Wori, Aché Mule, it says in that Odu, if that is a woman's Odu of Ifa, it says she'll be successful in positions, in jobs where males are the ones that are dominant in that position or job. So if she were to take on a stereotypical female role or position or job, she wouldn't be as successful. She needs to be doing things that the men are doing. So there's little changes that happen within very specific odus, but there is a general division of labor within the Ifa tradition. A lot of it based on what I mentioned on the initiator and the manifestation belief there. So,
well, part of what we're hearing right now is a piece that Baba Popola mentioned, right? Which is that ultimately we have to really examine culture, because the idea of manhood is a cultural manifestation, right? It's a cultural construction, right? And what manhood may be in the context of traditional African culture may be very different than what we see in an Asian culture or European culture. We know it's very different than what we see in European culture. Much of the patriarchy that we're seeing is our abandoning of traditional African culture, which is more what I'll call ma'atrical, right? Using the riffing off the idea of ma'at, of balance, right? Truth, justice, righteousness, rightfulness, right? And I think in traditional culture, you've had a lot more of that. Not saying that traditional African culture was without patriarchy. I'm just saying that there's a lot more balance in those dynamics. And by kind of returning to that and leaning into what the Odu is teaching us, as we hear Baba Jose give us and Baba Papola give us the Odu references, it gives us a way to examine our patriarchy and how we're acting, and give us a way to prescribe it, right? To change those things, right? Because some of it is about perspective, right? And understanding that we really ought to be looking for relationships that are equitable and not necessarily equal. In other words, men and women don't have to do the same thing in order to be at the same place, right? And so again, I'll go back to an example I used. The Oni Orisha, right, who's both the president and the pope within the context of the Yoruba culture, is the head of the state, but that person is decided by the Gelede Society, which is a group of women. So you cannot become Oni, right? You cannot become Kabiesi without the ordination of a group of elder women who have decided you are the person that they will follow, right? And so that's where the balance is. It's not, the balance isn't in, this time it's a man, this time it's a woman, this time it's a man. And so we have to understand it in the cultural context in which they've developed.
Thank you for that. And I want to make sure that we get back to Jose Arturo to show your photo. I think it's ready now. And then I want to make sure we make space for Alex and Baba Dejanes to respond as well.
like I was saying, this is an installation I did at a Goico school, and let me see if we can see it now.
Yeah, Olga is going to share it, I believe.
There you go. You seeing it? Yeah, there we go.
Yes. Success.
So yeah, this is this installation is called what's called offering like offerings, and as you can see, basically what I try to recreate here is that space, that sacred space in the mountain or in the mangrove, where all the energies meet and odorichas, and the effect on the people that went to see the installation was one of peace and a sense of getting into a forest, and that's basically the intent. So no, I just wanted to share this with you guys, and later on I will be sharing what Marta was referring to. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Alex, did you want to pick it up? Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, considering the framing that Baba Popula had already shared, and what Baba Kevin talked about also in terms of the specificity of roles, the duality, and all of this grounded within a structure of patriarchy, how does that inform what we see as the spaces that need to be disrupted, that need to be challenged? We understand that, and some of the conversation is talked about, limitations versus differences, right? But as men, how do we respond to what the responsibility of the positioning that we currently have, recognizing the patriarchal structure that we are working in and the limitations that may exist? What is the way, how do we respond to that? You're on mute, Alex, if you're talking. Yeah. You can't hear me? Okay. So we're going to come back to you, Alex. Baba Dejanez, if we can get you to respond. And I also see you wanted to share an image as well.
Yes, I want to share an image. The image of the installation that I spoke before. You want to, I open up? Could you see it?
I'm unable to see it. Olga, are you able to assist him in showing
wow,
his image?
I just have a, So I don't see the share button here. Could you tell me what it is?
Yeah, the share button should be at the very bottom of your screen, next to mic, stop cam, settings.
No, setting. Oh yeah, okay.
Next to While we're doing that, I again want to invite the participants to continue to drop some of your comments and questions in the chat. We're going to get to those as soon as we finish this round of discussions right here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, if it's
okay, I have it right here. It's share, no? And then share screen. And share. And this is the image. It jumped into it?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I think.
Okay.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah,
it's okay.
So if we can just maybe have you address the question, and then we'll see if we can get that before we close out for you to share.
Okay. Oh, because they allow block. Well, it's blocked.
Okay. All right. No, that's fine.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries. So let's start taking some of the questions in the chat. Um, I see one question from Ivy Rose: what characteristics of our traditional and indigenous religions are most needed by men in America, and B, what characteristics might be most attractive to men here to promote a healthier and more positive Black community? So we'll open that up for anyone who wants to take that.
Mm.
Kevin, you want to dive in? I see you.
I do. Look, I think that there is, one of the things that I think that we need to really understand more is this idea of balance, right? This idea that we need each other. This idea that 400 men, in a place without any, without any woman present, without any feminine energy, you still can't be effective in what you want to do. And that story from Aché Tora, I think we all know well. And I think all of us, to the degree that we have found success, have found it because we found balance in our lives with women who have done two things. One, help us become better men, right? And two, um, have smoothed us out, right? From the things that would be smooth us out from toxic masculinity, right? And for some people like me, it took longer than others. hopefully it wasn't as a bumpy road for all of y'all as it's been for me. And continues to be for me, right? um and so I think that this idea for both men and women to understand that they need each other. And I think particularly, like, as you talk to people and you on social media and you hear people about cutting that cancel culture and cutting people off and I don't need anybody and like that's not a play. That's not a from our tradition, from our cultural worldview. That's not a real thing. People of African descent are cultural communitarians, right? I am because we are, and because we are, therefore I am, right? You need a certain number of people in order to do rituals. You can't do a ritual with one. Even babalawos, you're really supposed to have at least 3 babalawos there, right? Everybody watches each other, checks each other, right? Ifa himself, right, or Orumila himself, Ilaping, and Baba Popola, correct my pronunciation, Ilaping Iping, right? He witnessed to creation, right? So even Olodumare had a witness to the work that he did when he created the universe, right? And so for all of that, there's a communal sense about where we come from, and so in all the Apataki and the Fa, you continue to hear this notion that we need each other, that we have to work together, that we have to support each other, and I think that is the characteristic, that communitarian, that idea that we live together and work together, um, is a big deal. Those of you who have done initiations or rituals in places like Brazil and Cuba and Nigeria, you see how that they are run very different than how we run them here, right? Like the whole compound is involved when there's a ritual happening. Sometimes the whole village is involved when there's and what they say, many hands makes light work, right? And there's also a different energy, and even people who sometimes not even involved in the ritual are involved in certain places, and doing certain things, and they come in and help out, and they cleaning up, and they partake of the food and everything. And so I think that sense, that communitarian sense, that sense that we have to be a community, and as we do ritual, as we engage in our manifestation of the divine, and whatever way that's being expressed, that we have to engage as many people as possible and make sure that it's a collective process.
I think, could I say something?
Please do. Please do.
I think this is a new era. I think we have to revise many things. There are a lot of dogma that doesn't work. Yeah, we have to be more sincere, but more honest with ourselves. and see how we can put things together and work. One of the things to do is to destroy our own ego. I remember when I was doing that ritual of destroying my own ego, trying to overcome someone else, that more honest, more sincere, more profound, and also looking at things. I think now everything starts from us too. We have to revise everything, but there are things we have to do all together in a very synergetic way. Um, so to try to give a formula to someone, it doesn't work no more. You have to really feel it, very profound. You have to feel this. You have to sense your own energy. You have to sense the energy of the others, how you share. You see, there's something about that I'm trying to practice. Sensing the energy of someone else, sensing your own energy, how you can flow with energy with someone else, you know, in a real way, in a very sincere way. I don't call this religion. I call this just simply a way of living. I call this a holistic way of living. Sense it your own self, sense it that someone else sense, trying to see what else the other person need, but not trying to deal with it in a false way. Just being sincere, just being yourself. And I mean, if I have to be a free spirit to do that, that's what I do. And that's what I call archaeology. You have to look at everyone else. It's very important to look at the past. But we made many mistakes in the past, and we still make mistakes today. We might make the same mistake tomorrow too, if we don't have that critical mind, a critical way of living. You know,
Hmm.
art
Hmm.
helps to do that
Indeed.
because we don't have to fool around. We just do our work.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you.
So
Jose Arturo, I see you up next. Thank you.
I would like to, listening to you guys, I would like to add that it reminded me the beauty of this all these differences. If you take a look at the Caribbean, it's all these thousands of little islands, small, bigger, different shapes, the colors, and that fractality. It's beautiful. From if you take my family for example, my mother is white, green eyes, blonde. My dad is more like I'm more like my dad. And that diversity, I see it as part of being living in this part of the world, of the Caribbean. I call it the fractal, and I've been exploring that in my graphic work for a long time. That fractality in plants, in nature, and in our society, and that masculinity and that feminine sides, they both express in myself. At some points the feminine side comes in different ways, and then the masculine side, and vice versa, and that's the beauty of it, that fractality. And in IFA I learned that I associate that concept of fractality and diversity with the uno multiple, the y. And if I do a graphic, from that y comes another branch, and that grows into a mesh of differences. But at the same time, if you look from it from far, you can see it's all together. So I don't know. I just wanted to add that beauty of diversity at the same time, the fractality of it all. And I have a couple of images here that work with that concept of fractality. Let me see if I can show you one really fast. Here, this is called a yagrumo tree, and the yagrumo is the first tree that grows after a hurricane destroys everything. This is the first plant that starts growing in the forest, and after the yagrumo, then comes the other plants. And this is an aerial image of the yagrumo, but as you can see, I don't know if you can appreciate it in the screen, but you can see like mass different faces and different things, and it's just a yagrumo. But that there's the fractality that I can see in everything, including our society, and the relationships between us and the and our women and our, in general, you know, I see it as a fractal thing, and for me, it's beautiful, that concept of fractality.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you for sharing that. I see we have Alex back, and I'm looking at the time, and we need to wind down. We have a remaining 14 minutes. What I'd like to do is Marisol Santiago has a question that I think would be a good question for us to end with. Knowing what you know now, what would you advise young men seeking an understanding in their own path? Also, the importance of finding elders and community. So I think this speaks to not only what we're teaching and training, but how we're modeling. What are the things that we want to advise, particularly young men on? And Alex, can you go first since we lost you?
I'd love to.
Lost your voice, please. Thank you.
Definitely. I apologize for earlier. I had a few technical difficulties. I mean, the very first thing that I would say is to have patience, right? Don't just rush into anything. You know, when coming, especially nowadays when you're trying to find an elder, make sure that this elder is backed by a community, that this elder is given the approval by the community first, and then even then, you know, do research because. I mean, my godfather always taught me, el que mucho prisa no yo cae. He who rushes falls in holes. And that's true because, I mean, what may work for one person may not work for someone else. And I've seen many times that there have been people that just don't feel like they fit in a particular spiritual house or community, but they find themselves at home in another. So what works for one may not always work for the other. So I always tell folks, you know, really take your time, get to know this elder, get to know the people that they are looking for, and really do it for yourself. Don't do it for anyone else. Do it because there's this drive, there's this there's this calling to grow and to change and to find oneself, and that's always been the reason for me to learn and grow within all of these different traditions. You know, I'm looking more to get to know myself better, to get to know my roots, to get to know my history, and I feel that that's really the only way that I can be a good elder for anyone else. I have to know myself first. I have to be able to stand upright myself. Like Dr. Fukiao said, "Te la maluimba nganga." I have to learn how to stand upright like a chief first before I'm able to assist anyone else or to be an elder for anyone else. I have to be able to know myself, know the good, the bad, the ugly, and I think that's the key. It's really just knowing yourself and taking your time in knowing yourself and taking your time in knowing your elders. And you know, for example, I don't take initiation lightly. I don't initiate people very easily. I make sure that I take the time to know the person that I'm going to initiate. So usually when people come to me to be initiated within the Mayombe, the Congo traditions, I get to know them for about a year or two before I decide to initiate them. Only because I want to make sure that this is going to be the right fit for both sides. You know, I have to know this person's morals, this person's characters, this person's way of being. Is this person the right fit for the munanso, for the house? And am I the right person for the individual looking to be initiated? So yeah, so that, I mean, that to me is like the most important part when it comes to really just taking your time and getting to know folks and entering any of these traditions, and even more so for young men, you know, because unfortunately there are, you know, you have a lot of amazing elders, not unfortunately, but you have a lot of amazing elders out there, but unfortunately there's also many more charlatans out there, who are quick to take anyone off, you know, who are quick to to make a quick dollar off of anybody who comes their way, who haven't learned the traditions, haven't taken the time. I mean, I didn't begin initiating anyone until almost my 20th year of being initiated as a priest of Mayombe. And that's the way I carry it into Orisha practice as well. I don't want to get into it just to initiate people. I have to first grow and learn and become the best elder I can be. And then, with the blessings of my elders, because it wasn't until my godfather and my godmother said that I was ready that I began and even then with a lot of hesitancy, that I didn't begin initiating people. And I think that's the same thing with all of these practices. We really have to take our time and grow.
Thank you for that. And what I would like for the rest of the panelists to do, we have a remaining 8 minutes. If you can just take 1 minute to respond to the question of what are we saying to younger men in terms of their quest to find elders and their positioning in this tradition. So we can, Jose Rodriguez and Baba Populo, or we can go to you, and then we'll go to Dejanez, Baba Kevin, and then Jose Arturo. And the question is in the chat on the screen if you need to see it again.
Okay. I would suggest that when young men, young women are looking to get into this tradition, there's so many things you got to check and look at when looking at elders. But one of the things I would look to see is ask them who their elders were, who their teachers are, who trained them, because just like we would do before going to a doctor, a dentist, and we want to know where is that certification, right, coming from? Because you definitely don't want to end up with someone who learned everything from videos or books or copies of stuff on how to do things. That is not how you learn any African tradition or any indigenous tradition at all. And unfortunately, especially because of the internet, it happens a lot. So definitely check who they've studied with, and then check to make sure that they really did study with those people. And start from there. And then once that's checked out, see what are they doing in their communities? What are they doing in their family? And how are they helping out the community that they're involved in? Because as far as Orisha practice, Ifa practice, it's communal.
That's right.
So there's always a communal responsibility for the priest. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you. Baba Populo, in 1 minute, please, if you can answer, and then I'll pass it around, please.
Okay, in Ifa, what we say that there are 4 types of elders. You need to identify which one you want to follow. The first one is those who have the character and those who have the knowledge. You need to become their slave. The second one are those who have the character but do not have the knowledge. Study their character, live their knowledge. The third one are those who have the knowledge but do not have the character. Study the knowledge and live the character. The fourth one is those who do not have the character and who do not have the knowledge. Greetings should be what would associate you with them. But after that, the youth have a problem. When you go to elders to study, be careful what you tell them. For example, I know in my community, when people go to elders, please, I want you to teach me Oyekulugwe, for example. The first question they will ask you is, what are the stanzas that you know in that Oyekulugwe? The moment you start to recite the stanzas because you want to impress them, forget it, you have lost them. What they will tell you is, oh, since you know all those ones, those are enough. But try to be humble and tell them, I don't even know anything about it. Even if you know up to 40 stanzas, I don't know anything about it. But I know that when I come to elders, you are going to teach me the ones that are very relevant to my life. Aha. Then the first question they will ask you is, do you know it where Ifa says that that person should not travel? No, I don't know anything. They will teach you. Do you know it where Ifa says that anybody is having problem of childbearing, there are certain rituals that you need to perform? No, I don't know it. Then you may end up having 4 extra stanzas that will help you. But if you go there and then you want to dance to the gallery, you are going to lose them. And they will note you. They will not like to teach you again. And if you go to anywhere and you meet your Baba Ifa, you are now reciting everything that he had taught you, he won't teach you again because you want to embarrass him. When it comes to his own turn to recite anything, what do you expect him to say after you have said everything to them? So those are the things that you need to understand. And when you do, it's going to help you a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. Baba Kevin,
So again, thank you so much. I
with the
was really
wardrobe change.
honored. Yeah, I'm really really honored to be part of this amazing conversations and with men who are just packed full of knowledge, and particularly with you, Baba Popola. As always, you have given us much to think about and much for us to understand. Let me just add my small piece to this, in that mentorship should be the name of the game when it comes to how we develop not just ourselves, but the generations that come after us. And this was one of the things I think I heard Baba Jose talk about before. When you go to Nigeria, you see 2-year-olds teaching 3-year-olds teaching 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds teaching the 3-year-olds, the 5 years teaching the 4-year-olds, right? The 13-year-olds teaching the 12-year-olds. And I think that we need to get back to that. If people don't have mentors, you need to find one. You see how close Baba Jose is keeping his. He won't even let his go home. He gets right, right. But you have to keep them close, and you always have to check in and have people help you grow, and then likewise, we need to be teaching those who are underneath us, right? And so even though many of us understand that we're not complete yet, but we still have something that we can pass on to those who are trying to get to where we are, and whether that's in the context of our various priesthoods, or whether it's within our professions, or whether it's just a family member in life. And again, here's a place that culture can be, and particularly African culture, can be instructive to us. The matriarchal nature of Yoruba culture, for instance, fathers don't much teach sons as much as uncles teach nephews, right? It is if you belong to a particular matrilineal line, it is the men in that matrilineal line whose responsibility it is to teach you the things that you need to know. And so it is, and so however you deal with it, I'm saying if you don't have sons of your own to teach how to be men, then look to your nephews, look to your younger cousins. But we need to be able to provide mentorship at the same time as we're receiving mentorship.
Thank you very much. And I know you have to run, so if
Yes.
you log off before,
Yes.
thank you for joining this
No,
conversation.
thanks for having me. Really, really amazing.
Thank you, thank you. Brother Dejanez, please, and then we want to close out with Brother Jose Arturo. You're on mute.
You're muted, Johannes.
I think things happen in life for a reason.
You're muted again.
You're muted again. We heard the profound opening.
Okay. I think, but again, I think that things happen in life for a reason. Once we enter our labyrinth in life, we go to different level of understanding. And I think we have to put attention to that before we get out of that labyrinth, to knock at the doors, to move to another dimension in life, to become spirit or soul. So it's very important in life, not just to create community, but we first start with us. A doctor cannot cure someone if doesn't cure himself first. It's very important to cure ourselves first and then cure someone else. I mean, share with someone else. And thinking that the part, I think that's what the archaeologists are looking at, and many other issues, of course. And that's it. That my own contribution to that experience of someone. Also, before that, the elderly, I just go to a house that I share with a lot of elderlies, and they want just someone to go to the house and share with them and give some cookies or something, and tell stories. They love tell stories, When once they go to the dementia and all those issues like that we cannot talk about that now, but there are other elderly in the neighborhood here that they just want help, just help. And we need to do that too, as younger. Thank you.
Thank you. There's value in those stories. Absolutely. Thank you. Jose Arturo, bring us home, please.
Okay, I would like to say thank you all. It's been an amazing learning experience, but I cherish my memories with my talking with my grandparents, and now I do it with my dad and my mother. And that's what I would say to the younger generation. The point is to be a better human, to community, and if I is the path, well, so be it. If it's Buddha or whatever, the point is to get there, to get to be a better human in this society. And I would like to share that this experience of practicing Ifa in this little time got me to create beautiful things like this that Marta was referring to. I'm sure you're gonna uh, recognize it immediately. Let me just go here. There you go. So this piece down here below, I did it after a reading where Ifa told me very specifically, you need to do sculptures. And well, I I call it photo sculptures, and that's what I've been doing. I try to obey. Ifa no miente.
Wonderful.
This
Wonderful.
is my representation of one of those readings that I've been participating in. I'm sure you can recognize the elements that compose this.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to ask all of the panelists, all of the participants to join me in thanking our panelists for an insightful, informative 2-hour conversation. Left us with a lot to think about. We know that what our traditions teach us is, above all, is to move with iwapele, with good character, to make sure that we move in a way that matches our intentions. And so it is my prayer that we all do so, and that we model the masculine energy, the manhood that we want to follow us, and that we be about the business of really participating in the evolution and the progress of our traditions. And I thank you all very much for your time, for your contributions, for your work. And Marta, I'm not sure if we turn this back over to you or if we are closing it out this way. You're on mute too.
I'm on mute.
There you go. No, you're good. You're good now.
Okay. So we could to close it out together, right? Thank you all for participating, for sharing. I've learned so much in the discussion, so thank you. Lubumba, thank you for moderating. And these conversations will continue. The next one is a cycle with the Women of Spirit. And based on our audience questions and response, we could always do another discussion and continue the discussion. So we're all in a learning process. We're all in a growing process. And I think important to center is that we're living in a historical moment. And what is our role in this historical moment? And I think Diogenes was addressing that. And we all need to address that. We are living in a moment of a pandemic, a global pandemic. We're living in a moment where democracy is in question. We're living in a moment where our health is in question. So that how we understand what we must do at this moment for ourselves and our community, for our families, for each other is critical. And you helped us get there in the discussion. So thank you all very much. Hasta
Thank
la
you all.
próxima.
Hasta la próxima. Gracias. Thank you, Aché.